Serious, what is the scariest theory you know about? Attention! Serious tag notice. Jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in any comment. Parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour. And posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot. And this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit /message/compose/to/r/AskReddit if you have any questions or concerns. I saw one about the potential of a specific type of supernova that would essentially fire out beam of radiation or some other kind of energy. If it hit Earth, we would see the entire sky covered with auroras. This is the ozone layer burning off and the last thing we would see before we all die. Guess at least we get a pretty light show to end on. Gamma ray burst, they are produced when a supernova becomes a black hole or two neutron stars merge, so they are extremely common. Kurt Giesig did a great video on them. As an astronomer, space scares me but also fascinates me. It is speculated that there are over 2,000 active serial killers in the US alone. It makes you realize that many of the serial killers we know of today, Bundy, BTK, Gacy, are ultimately failed serial killers. It's like that usual suspects line, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he did not exist. Doesn't help that the entire profile of a serial killer is so well known that any serial killer with half a brain cell would be subverting it intentionally. The only serial killers that fit the standard profile of a serial killer are the most compulsive, incompetent serial killers. If you're only looking in places where there's a pattern for a serial killer without a pattern is hard to trace. Add in professional serial killers like Israel Keys and you have numerous types under the radar. Criminal Minds did some good episodes on this, two of which I'll mention now. 1. No Way Out Parts 1 and 2. Basically, a guy goes around in a van and tranquilizes people. Then he loads them into his van with a mirror on the ceiling and makes them watch as he dissects them. He racks up a kill count of 216 before he is even suspected. Because there is simply no way to know that he's kidnapping random people in the middle of the night at random places. 2. Prince of Darkness. A guy in a mobile home travels the country and breaks into one random house at each town he stops at. He rapes the wife, murders the husband, steals their cash, and leaves to do it again somewhere else. Nobody knows it's him because literally nobody knows him. His entire life revolves around killing and raping. And he can't be caught because there is no way at all to even know he was there. Because he's already on the highway again. He got 430 kills. Both of these killers were only caught because they decided to torment someone specifically. That, after decapitation, you may still be conscious and somewhat aware for at least a few seconds. Entfernt. That the Big Bang is just a never-ending cycle. Each time the universe explodes into existence, it will inevitably end, then the Big Bang restarts. Each iteration of existence is just a rerun of the Big Bang. The theory is likely called Big Bounce. Don't forget the Big Crunch, which definitely ties into that. Basically, we know that the Big Bang exploded and all matter in the universe is still flying outward from the Big Bang. The Big Crush is the theory that everything will eventually slow down and then stop and slowly be pulled back to the spot that the Big Bang happened, probably to start it all over again. Oh yeah, absolutely. But I must admit it scares me knowing that the Big Bounce theory exists and that we may never know in our lifetimes which theory is actually true. That theory about what happened on the missing Malaysian flight. From looking at the evidence and the most likely scenario, that being the pilot committing suicide. People have been able to piece together possible scenarios that happened on the plane. One of which is that shortly into the flight, the pilot deoxygenated the plane and accelerated to a high altitude, killing all on board very quickly. He then flew for hours and hours south before crashing the plane. It's scary to me because he would have been flying in an isolated part of the Earth, with nothing ahead of him other than the South Pole. That isolated plane, flying in the dark, with hundreds of dead strapped in their seats. The nearest city, Perth, is still asleep and only beginning to wake up. There is no one, and nothing. To think of that man flying with all those bodies in the dark to nowhere is very scary. So selfish and cowardly, but also very scary. There was a very interesting article in The Atlantic about it. The cabin occupants would have become incapacitated within a couple of minutes, lost consciousness, and gently died without any choking or gasping for air. The scene would have been dimly lit by the emergency lights, with the dead belted into their seats, their faces nestled in the worthless oxygen masks dangling on tubes from the ceiling. It's messed up. But I find it comforting the people on that flight died peacefully. I was in the airport in Barcelona early one morning, and when we landed we heard there was a plane that had crashed in the French Alps. My husband's phone was blowing up with people making sure our flights hadn't been changed. I think about those 150 people often, and that no one else ever saw them alive again after us. The thought of them descending in terror for 10 minutes before the plane crashed still makes me cry as hard as I did that day. Germanwings Flight 9525. That would have been very scary. It is an odd sort of comfort. I hope that many of them were asleep because it was so early in the morning. As Arctic permafrost melts, it will release diseases that have been frozen in the ground for thousands or tens of thousands of years, and life on Earth will have no immunity to them. Wonder how the world will react if a disease suddenly infected the whole world. We're good at following orders and social distancing so it won't spread that fast, right? Even if it could, I'm sure with the concrete and immediate steps the world is taking to fight climate change, none of this will come to pass. That the Carrington event is actually on a 150 to 200 year repeating cycle. Goodbye electricity. What's the Carrington event? A CME coronal mass ejection hit the Earth's magnetosphere and caused a giant geomagnetic storm. The entire ionosphere became charged and unstable with massive induced electrical current. On the good side, such an event causes beautiful aurora northern lights across the majority of the planet. On the bad side, its giant planet-wide solar EMP. It wreaked havoc on telegraph systems. But they were about the only electrical equipment at the time. If a similar event happened today, first the global satellite network would be annihilated. Then any radio signals would break up, including your phone going dead. Immediately followed by most radio equipment being fried. Next, the power grids will go. Not just a worldwide blackout, but power surges would destroy most of what's connected to the grid, including the chaos of the transformer and substations exploding. Virtually every vehicle will suddenly shut off, and suddenly being very difficult to control will crash. Some heavily shielded military craft might survive, but in general commercial aircraft will suddenly fall from the sky. All of this would happen extremely fast. From any one person's point of view it may seem to be instantaneous. If a bit stronger than the Carrington event, it may also destroy the backup systems that protect critical infrastructure from disasters. The Carrington event was over 150 years ago. Earth been hit by significant but much smaller CMEs at least twice since then. They'd be enough to cause quite a bit of damage today, but manageable. A Carrington event-sized CME had a near miss with Earth in 2012. We actually have multiple solar flares hit our magnetosphere every year. Just generally not that cause significant issues, though there are predictable events a couple times a year that interfere with some satellites for a couple hours a few days in a row. Carrington event-sized CMEs are common enough that within your lifetime it is pretty much guaranteed to see at least one or two more near-miss events. CMEs can be much stronger though. During certain parts of the 11-year solar cycle, the Sun regularly emits CMEs large enough that, if they hit Earth, would strip the atmosphere, boil off the oceans, and incinerate everything on the surface, sterilizing the planet. There would be no real warning. Depending where you were on the planet, it would either be instantaneous or you'd have just enough time to see a glow in the sky from the wall of fire before it crested the horizon and engulfed you at several times the speed of sound. GRBs are the only deadlier threat I am aware of. We don't know whether the universe is in a true vacuum, lowest possible energy state, or a false vacuum, a local low. But not the lowest. If the universe is a false vacuum, at any point, at any moment, a quantum tunneling event could occur where that point spontaneously decays to a true vacuum. If that happened, a bubble would expand from that point at the speed of light that radically altered physics, instantly annihilating everything down to the subatomic level. Since it travels at sea, there'd be no warning, no way to see it coming. When it reached us, you'd just instantly blink out of existence. Even if we are in a false vacuum, such an event doesn't become likely for at least 10,139 years. But it could happen at any moment, at any point. It could have already happened and the bubble could be heading straight for us, about to end us at any TI. If there's no warning and we would instantly blink out of existence, what is there to be scared about? What if I forget to put the bins out before I disappear? The butterfly effect kind of freaks me out because it suggests that every little action could be part of a series of events that leads to something much more impactful. For example, I could drop a pencil, which distracts someone for a few seconds, causing them to miss the bus. And after a few billion seemingly insignificant events, World War III begins. Equally likely that you dropping the pencil prevents World War III. The two possibilities cancel each other out, so you don't have to worry about it. That's a good way of looking at it. Forgive me for piss poor job I'm about to do describing it since I forget the name of it, but I recently read here on Reddit that as humans have a defense mechanism where we can see something that is non-human but mimicking a human, such as a realistic wax figure, and know that something is off. The theory was that in our evolution there was a predator that could mimic being human that we had to adapt and develop this defense mechanism for. The rebuttal to this theory was that it comes from us seeing dead bodies through sickness or disease and not blatant Neanderthal murder or death from an animal through our evolution and learning that something is wrong / out of the ordinary and a cause for concern. Undefined. The uncanny valley. It freaks me out, too. I feel as though the rebuttal is the accurate reading to why. But it's kind of fun to think of the other possibilities. Agreed. It seems more likely to me that humans are just hypersensitive to shades of variation in human faces. In particular, it's a highly useful skill. The possibility that I am just a brain in a jar and my entire life is just something my brain fabricated to keep itself entertained. Everything and everyone I have ever known is a figment of imagination. Every method I can conceive to prove this idea wrong is also just part of the dream logic my brain has created to make sense of the illusion that is my existence. Might not even be a brain at all. The true reality might be completely different with completely different physics, laws, and rules. Ours are the only ones that make sense to us because they're the only world we've lived in. You could be a pile of goop connected to a grid. We already know that true reality is different. Take radio waves for example. We don't have a sense in our bodies to detect them. But we know they are there. If we were to just gain another sense beyond our five, we would open up reality more. That AI self-replicating, and immortal, has a better chance of colonizing this galaxy that biological life does. Think about it. It took hundreds of millions of years for life to get to this point. From a ball of proteins to multicellular creatures to plants in an incredible amount of time. Back in the late 1970s, I was playing with computers that had 4K of RAM. 40 years later we have incredible computing power in the palms of our hands. Hundreds of gigs. And terabyte micro SD cards. Robotic manufacturing of everything from circuit boards to vehicles is the norm. Where will this tech be in a couple hundred years? Will AI be able to design and launch spacecraft that are capable of self-maintenance for the hundreds, maybe thousands, of years it would take to reach the nearest exoplanets? Once they arrive, will they be capable of self-replication? Machines don't need food and water. Machines aren't susceptible to disease or mental health issues. Machines don't seek power or authority, and don't victimize each other for amusement. What if the purpose of human life in the universe is to facilitate the creation of AI and launch its spread into the wild? This could the Berserker series by Fred Saberhagen for more. At an undiscernible point, AI stops being artificial and just is intelligence. Also, if a machine is at a level of complexity where abstract thought and imagination are happening, it becomes difficult to say that this is not a life form of some kind. What you describe is a terrifying possibility. But it is also likely that at some point humans will be able to transfer their minds to a digital substrate and live on as digital intelligences. This may be how mankind transcends the physical world to colonize the universe far more efficiently than biological life might. So I can't remember the name of it for the life of me. But I learned this in a class I took last semester. There's a theory that says that there is a point that no intelligent life can get past, no matter what they do. Diving deeper into this, some people claim this is why we haven't found any other intelligent life forms. I think the truly scary part about it is that we won't know we are at that point until we are living it. It's called the Great Filter. You can think about it two ways basically. We have already passed the filter, and therefore we may really be all alone in the universe. Or, we have yet to hit it, and there's this looming thing that will keep us from advancing. I tend to believe we have yet to pass the filter. Yes, thank you, that's it. I believe the same thing. I'm sure when we reach it, which I'm sure won't be for a little bit, we won't make it past it.